Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
I'm Jason Miller. On tonight's Evan Miller Report, the U.S. says it's speeding up weapons deliveries to the Saudi-led coalition bombing of Houthi rebels. We have the latest tonight. Also on tonight's program, Libya says they have new elements in the killing of U.S. Ambassador Chris Stevens in the 2012 assassination. We'll have the latest information. Greece says that Germany owes them nearly $279 billion in euros in war reparations from World War II. We'll explain that tonight on the program. And what is lurking behind the mask of mandatory vaccines? Assemblyman Devon Mathis will join us to discuss his opposition to California Senate Bill 277 on tonight's Evan Miller Report. All those stories and more, plus Corey Evans.
Thank you, Jay. Kansas works to fight back against welfare abuse. Finally, no more tattoos on Kansans' dime. Google's YouTube Kids is coming under fire for having too many commercial advertisements. So it's not just the kids trying to skip ads? Starbucks expands their tuition coverage for their baristas. Imagine that. Serve coffee and get an education. In lawsuits today, Larry Flint stops by, figuratively, but Jay's still not amused by the darn pervert. And Hollywood loses a real Duke of Hazzard. That's all coming up on today's edition of your conservative news source, the Evan Miller Report, starting now.
Live from Southern California, this is the Evan Miller Report. Jason Miller with news and politics, Corey Evan with business and entertainment. This is the Evan Miller Report on SHR Media and Public Press Radio. Here now, Jason Miller.
And a very good evening on this Tuesday, April the 7th, 2015. I'm Jason Miller along with Corey Evan this evening.
We finally got some clouds coming in. Maybe you were right about there being rain, because I read there was a 50-50 shot, at least in this area overnight.
Well, we hope for the best in getting the rain, and maybe it'll shut up the drought people who say that there's a drought in this state. Not, I don't believe.
Hardly. Yeah, it's probably going to leave like a quarter of an inch or half an inch, tops.
Certainly right. Although that in the weather forecast later in the program. But first tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we start off in Yemen, where the U.S. says it is speeding up weapons deliveries to a Saudi-led coalition bombing Houthi rebels who have taken up arms against the government in Yemen. The U.S. is also boosting intelligence sharing with the coalition, according to Deputy Secretary of State Anthony Blinken. Aid agencies have warned of a looming humanitarian crisis in the Yemeni port of Aden, which has seen street battles between rebels and government allies. Some 550 people are said to have died in the last fortnight of fighting. According to the World Health Organization, nearly 2,000 people have been injured over the same period. The UN Children's Agency UNICEF says at least 74 of the dead are children and more than 100,000 people have been displaced. A spokesperson for the International Committee of the Red Cross said the situation in Aden was, quote, catastrophic to say the least, end quote. The war in Aden is on every street in every quarter, said Marie-Claire Figel, who told the AFP news agency that many are unable to escape. The Red Cross is one of the several aid agencies trying to send more medical supplies and workers to Aden. Yesterday, the Red Cross tried landing in Yemen to drop off supplies, but was unable to do so. The port has been largely cut off since the Houthi rebels and their allies advanced upon it in March, forcing President Abdur Mansur Hadi to flee to Saudi Arabia. Fighting escalated in the city this week with reports of overflowing hospitals, hijacked ambulances, and bodies left in the streets. Moving on to Libya, where they have internationally recognized parliament said today that it uncovered new elements behind the 2012 assassination of U.S. Ambassador Chris Stevens when the American consulate was stormed in eastern Benghazi. The Taras Sarol Al-Jura said, quote, "I have been tasked today with leading a team of inquiry," he said, speaking to the AFP news agency. He said the team had new elements on the real perpetrators of the attack and would work closely with the FBI and congressional commissions of inquiry in the United States, although he did not elaborate on the identities of the assailants. A Libyan parliamentary delegation is to travel to the U.S. for consultations with members of Congress, Jurek said. Christopher Stevens, of course, the ambassador, and 3 other Americans were killed back in September of 2012 on the consulate that was said at the time to be the work of a jihadist group by the State Department, which Washington had branded a terrorist organization, al-Sharati. U.S. Special Forces seized a Libyan national, Ahmed Abdul Khatta, as a chief suspect in a 2014 raid near Benghazi and handed him over to American judicial authorities. Libya has been run by 2 governments and 2 parliaments since August, when Islamist-backed militia alliance overran the capital of Tripoli. The government, recognized by the international community, fled to the country's far east and set up in the city of Tobruk. More on this story as details become available. On to Greece now, where the Greek government says that the country of Germany owes Greece nearly 279 billion euros. That's about 303 billion US dollars in war reparations for the Nazi occupation during World War II. It is the first time Greece has officially calculated what Germany alleged owes it for Nazi atrocities and looting during the 1940s. However, the German government says the issue was resolved legally years ago. Greece's radical left Syriza government is making the claim while struggling to meet massive debt repayment deadlines. Reacting to the Greek claim, German economy minister Sigmar Gabriel said it was, quote, dumb to link Greece's bailout by the Eurozone with the question of war reparations. To be honest, I think it's dumb. I think that it doesn't move us forward 1 millimeter on the question of stabilizing Greece, he was quoted as saying. He also said ordinary Greek citizens deserved huge respect for their economic sacrifices under the bailout program. The Greek elite had plundered the country, he complained. Meanwhile, Greek Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras raised the reparations issue when he met German Chancellor Angela Merkel in Berlin last month. The new figure given by the Greek Deputy Finance Minister Dimitris Mardis includes 10.3 billion euros for an occupation loan that Nazi forced the Bank of Greece to pay. According to our calculations, the debt linked to German reparations is 278.7 billion euros, Mr. Mardis told the parliamentary committee investigating responsibility for Greece's debt crisis. Mr. Mardis said the reparations calculation had been made by Greece's State General Accounting Office. Moving on to France now, where a French socialist senator has been found dead on the day he was due to stand trial for corruption over Chinese wedding tours in the Loire Valley in that country. Jean Germain, the ex-mayor of Tours, was accused of illegally profiting from a business that arranged for Chinese tourists to renew their wedding vows against historic backdrops in the city. The 67-year-old left a goodbye letter denying the charges. His death has sent a shock through France's political circles. President Francis Hollande expressed sadness, while Prime Minister Manuel Valls said he had, quote, lost a friend, saying Mr. Germain had hugely changed the city of Tours. The trial was suspended on Tuesday after Mr. Germain failed to attend. A former mayor was found dead near to his home, according to press reports. Police sources were quoted as saying the death was believed to be a suicide. An Italian police attack on a protester at the 2001 G8 summit in Geneva pointed to torture, the European Court of Human Rights has ruled. Ardenio Sestro, who was 62 at the time, was badly hurt after being struck by truncheons in a police raid on a school housing by the protesters. The court also criticized Italian's law's apparent failure to prohibit torture. The Genoa summit was marked by violent clashes between anti-globalization protesters and police. Mr. Silvestro was staying in the Diaz Pension School when a riot squad stormed the building looking for members of the Black Bloc group of violent agitators. Witnesses say the occupants lay on the floor without resisting, but police beat them with batons anyway. Other cases are pending before the court. And moving on tonight to British election news tonight. I do apologize. My computer was a little bit slow tonight in bringing up my text on that. I apologize. A Labour government would abolish the non-demonical rule which allows some wealthy individuals to limit the tax paid on earnings outside the UK. This coming from party leader Ed Miliband today. Mr. Miliband said that will say that the rule makes Britain an offshore tax haven. The Conservatives, meantime, said the number of so-called non-dorms had exploded under the previous Labour government. Meanwhile, the Tories will pledge resist for pupils with poor results in their end of primary school SATs test. Prime Minister David Cameron will promise zero tolerance of failure and mediocrity in schools. In other election news today, SNP leader Nicole Sturgeon clashed with Scottish leaders of Labour, the Lib Dems and Conservatives in a live election debate on Scottish STV. And I do apologize, ladies and gentlemen. Looks like I may have a message coming through here. And I do apologize. Sometimes my phone does go off at inopportune times. And I do apologize. That's not professional. Back to this story. 100 young voters grilled representatives of the main parties for a BBC Radio 1 newsbeat. Ex-Labour Prime Minister Tony Blair warned David Cameron's pledge to hold a referendum on Britain's EU membership would cause economic chaos. The Lib Dems pledged a $100 million prize fund for car makers to create low-emission vehicles. And UKIP's leader Nigel Farage challenged former Labour Prime Minister Tony Blair to a debate any night between now and the election. There are an estimated 115,000 so-called non-dorms in Britain. Famous examples include Chelsea owner Romana Abramovich, while former Conservative Deputy Chairman Lord Ashcroft gave up the status in 2010 to keep his place in the House of Lords after a change of law. Some Labour supporters, including businessman Sir Golden Noon, also had non-dorm status in the past. The last Labour government toyed with abolishing the non-dorm system, but simply tightened the rules instead, which were then tightened further by Conservative Chancellor George Osborne. This is because non-dorms still have to pay tax on their UK earnings, so successive governments have calculated that on balance it is better to have them here making a contribution to the Equinor than to see them flee abroad. But as many countries do not operate a similar system, Labour leader Ed Miliband believes the vast majority of non-dorms would opt to stay and that the Equinor could gain hundreds of millions of pounds. Okay, thank you very much. I just received a message that our featured guest coming up in the next 60 seconds will be calling in a little late, but he will be with us in the next couple minutes. And that, of course, is our guest who's supposed to be joining us to talk tonight on the issue of mandatory vaccination tonight. He will be joining us. That is Assemblyman Devon Mathis. So in the meantime, while we are waiting Assemblyman Mathis to call into the program, we're going to go ahead and send it over to Corey Evan, and he has a look at some of the day's other national headlines tonight. Corey, take it away.
Will do. And just a note, that little tab on the side of your phone, the little switch, that'll silence it so we don't hear it. But at any rate, Kansas is poised to put a stop to the practice of welfare recipients using government aid to pay for psychics with a bill that cracks down on the use of welfare for fun. Yeah, I'm sure that many folks are making that call anyway, and it probably does override the ringer silence. But at any rate, It aims to encourage, according to CNN, those receiving government aid under the 10F program to spend more responsibly, as Kansas State Senator Michael O'Donnell told the Topeka Capital Journal. Quote, "We're trying to make sure those benefits are used the way they're intended," O'Donnell, vice chair of the state Senate's Standing Committee on Public Health and Welfare, said. "This is about prosperity. This is about having a great life. Having a great life, per the bill, means that welfare recipients cannot spend their government aid on body piercings, massages, spas, tobacco, nail salons, lingerie, ooh la la, arcades, cruise ships, or visits to the psychics. The bill also forbids spending the funds at theme parks, dog horse racing tracks, a sexually oriented business, or any retail establishment which provides adult entertainment. And it limits cash withdrawals of the funds to $25 a day in an attempt to prevent recipients from using their funds on inappropriate expenditures. It passed last week with large support from Republican majorities in the House and Senate, and Governor Sam Brownback is expected to sign it, though his spokeswoman has said he'll consider it carefully. Republicans in the state legislature didn't outline how significant the welfare fraud problem was in the state, and the number of welfare recipients actually declined by half in 3 years, from 17,600 in 2011 to 8,900 in 2014, according to the Capital Journal. Republicans have hailed that decline as evidence that the Brownback administration's strict work requirements and welfare restrictions are working. Democrats say the bill is unnecessarily discriminatory and, intentionally or not, will have the effect of exacerbating stigmas against the needy. But Kansas isn't the only state where GOP-led state legislatures are moving to implement restrictions and reforms on government aid for the needy. A Missouri Republican state lawmaker introduced a bill this week that would prevent food stamp recipients from using their aid to buy soft drinks, chips, cookies, seafood, and steaks with their funds. And Maine Governor Paul LePage unveiled a plan that would implement many of the same reforms as the Kansas bill on Monday. So, fighting back against the welfare abusers. Take that. Yeah. That actually feels good, and I doubt anything like that would come through to Jerry Brown's desk without him putting the rubber stamp called no on it. But he really should consider it. I'm just saying. One of President Obama's most vociferous critics, I think that's how you pronounce it, former VP Dick Cheney, is taking his case to the printed page, according to USA Today. Exceptional Why the World Needs a Powerful America, to be published September 1st, will focus on Cheney's long-held view that Obama has abandoned the U.S. tradition of global leadership, according to the publisher Threshold Editions. The George W. Bush VP, who is writing the book with daughter Lynn Cheney, will argue that Obama has significantly diminished American power at a time of growing threats, the publisher said. Oh, yeah. It's about time someone critiqued Obama, but at the same time, coming from Dick Cheney's desk, Jay, what are your thoughts on Dick Cheney firing back at Obama in the printed word?
Not surprising to me, Corey, that is happening. Dick Cheney has been known to occasionally come out and speak out on President Obama. Not surprising to me that happened. Okay, looks like we had the Assemblyman. He was trying to call in here, and let's see if I don't know what happened there, but we're going to see what happened. If we had a technical glitch there in getting him on the program, let's have him see if we can join that conversation here. Do apologize, ladies and gentlemen, for that technical glitch there that we had. All right, meantime, while we are waiting the Assemblyman, okay, looks like we had him on hold unexpectedly. Let's try this. Okay.
The person whom you're trying to reach is currently unavailable.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I apologize. What we're going to do is we're having some technical glitches getting the Assemblyman to call in. We're going to go take a short break, and hopefully we can get the Assemblyman on. I do apologize, and we will be right back.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
How you doing? John Grant here. When I'm not slaving over a hot microphone on the 405radio.com Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern, I check out Sean and Clint here at Sackheads Radio. We all appreciate the best political bloggers, writers, and commentators. We either get them on our shows or we make fun of them, as it should be. So check us out live Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern or forever on the podcasts on the 405radio.com.
This is Tammy Jackson, inviting you to join me on the Tammy Jackson Show every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Pacific on the 405radio.com. Put down that remote and tune into the show that covers politics, guns and the Second Amendment, religious liberties, sanctity of life, the military, and more. I host newsworthy guests and work hard to be a conservative radio show that's not like all the others. So save Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific for me, Tammy Jackson, on the 405media.com.
Hello, I'm Paul, a student at Hillsdale College. Here is my professor, Dr. Larry Arnn, on the separation of church and state.
America's founders believed in the separation of church and state, in that the country was not to have an official religion or an official sect. But that did not mean that government was to be hostile to religion, or even indifferent to religion, as many today argue. In fact, America's founding document, the Declaration of Independence, includes both a reference to God as the author of the laws of nature and a confident assertion that human beings are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Far from being hostile or indifferent to religion, America's founders understood the theology of the Declaration to be an essential part of the education of citizens.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.org.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
And welcome back to the Evan Miller Report here on the SHR Media Networks. I'm Jason Miller. Corey Evan back with the business news in about 10 minutes' time. Children today received 69 doses of vaccines for 16 different viral and bacterial illnesses, which more than doubles the government childhood schedule of 34 doses of 11 different vaccines in the year 2000. 35 doses and 5 more unique vaccines have been added to the schedule in the last 15 years. A vaccine exemption is filled regardless of whether the exemption is for one dose or for all doses. Those supporting forced vaccination are being dishonest by not acknowledging the exploding vaccine schedule while sounding alarms over small increases in overall non-medical exemptions. That comes as California has a bill in the legislature right now by the name of SB 277, which is supposed to allow the government to vaccinate your children without parental permission. And we are pleased to be joined now on the air now by Assemblyman Devon from Kern County here in California. And Assemblyman, thank you for being with us tonight. I'd like to first start out to ask you, how did this bill come about?
Well, when I first heard about it,
Yes, I'm still here, Assemblyman.
Okay. It was hey, let's get rid of these things. Let's make sure our children are taken care of. Which all sounds great. But when you dig into it and you start looking at it even more, what you realize, like you already said, Jason, is that this is actually taking away the parental right to say, well, wait a minute, maybe my child's immune system isn't the same as everybody else's. We're all different. We're all human. There's different things, and everybody's level is different with their immunities. And to sit here and say, okay, one size fits all, that's not a decision made by the government. It should not be. It breaks our parental rights. This is a conversation that needs to be between the parents and the doctor to go, this is my child, here's what's going on. Is this safe for them? Is this okay? What are the cause and effect? And by all means, I definitely want to clarify. It's not that I'm against vaccinations. I'm all for vaccines to take care of people, to make sure it's safe. But to take away a parental right to do a mandatory vaccination is just wrong.
Now, you're not only opposed to this because of the you are opposed to this because of the parental rights issue. Let me rephrase how I was going to ask the question. But you have also 2 special needs children, and
yes.
That's why the reason you and your wife are opposing the likes of this bill.
Yes.
Would you like to expand on that? Tell us a little bit more about that and how this bill would harm your children.
It's one of those undetermining factors. I know there was a lot of talk. My oldest son, he's autistic, and I know there's a whole bunch of junk about how vaccines cause autism. I think that's a bunch of BS. But I think there's certain factors that weigh in that we just don't know the full answers on yet, because there hasn't been enough studies done. There hasn't been enough things done. My other son has, he was born with spina bifida. I'm not going to sit here and go, okay, he needs to be vaccinated on this when he may already have an immune system problem or something like that. That's unforeseen. So to sit here and go, okay, we're going to vaccinate you right off the bat, it's, with a lot of things and a lot of vaccinations, it's you let yourself build up natural immunities. I mean, when I was a kid, it was, God made dirt don't hurt, and build up your immunity. Now it's, let's disinfect everything and give everybody shots. And there's a natural immune system that we have, and when you talk to, there's a lot of doctors that agree with that, and to have the government go, you know what, forget your immune system, we're going to say, here's your vaccination, that's the way it's going to be. I don't agree with that.
Well, I want to ask you, because some school districts, and I'm not going to say all because I can't speak for the whole state of California, but there are certain school districts here in the state of California saying that your kid needs to be vaccinated or else they're not going to be allowed to come to school.
I thought that was a statewide requirement, wasn't it, Jay?
Yeah, I thought that was a statewide requirement. At least that's what I heard 2 years ago. Now, if this bill passes, Assemblyman, this essentially will take this out of the parents' hands, and on top of it, the school can now force the parents to say, hey, you have to give your kids vaccinations or else they're not going to be able to come to school, and then you have Child Protective Services coming and knocking on your door saying, well, why isn't your kid coming to school?
Well, I mean, this is clearly a slippery slope of vaccinations. I mean, it's, we give them this much, then they're going to take even more. You give them an inch, they're going to take a mile. It's that whole, if you give a mouse a cookie.
Well,
I didn't go to war. I didn't get blown up twice in Iraq to come home to go, oh, and my parental rights don't matter now.
Yeah, you make
it's bad enough that we came home to the situation it is.
Yeah, you make a great point, Assemblyman, because there was a child over in the UK. Maybe you remember the story about a few months back. There was a kid over in the UK who was getting chemo treatment for his cancer. And his parents decided to tell the doctors in the UK, okay, we don't agree with your set treatment here of what you want to do, so we're going to take him over to Spain for a experimental treatment and try that on him. And the UK didn't like that very much, that they were going outside the UK for medical treatment, so they put an international arrest warrant out through the European Union for the kids' parents. I fear, sir, that if this bill is allowed to pass through the state of California, it's going to lead like that parents will not be able to make medical decisions on their kids, not only when it comes to vaccinations, but just for overall medical treatment.
Yeah, and like I said, it's one of those incremental things. We give up this right, and then the next thing they know, like you said, they're going to take something else. And this is one of those, we need to stop it here and make sure that our parents have the ability to sit down with doctors and go, this is what's best for my child. I represent, several different communities. I have a small piece of Kern. I have all, Tulare County. I have all of Inyo County. I have a large district that I represent, but up here in Sacramento, I'm not just making decisions for my district. I'm making decisions for the entire state of California. And, there are so many different cultural backgrounds, community backgrounds, different belief systems that weigh in here. And, there's a lot of talk about, religious rights and these different things, floating across the nation right now, too. And to sit here and say, okay, we're going to cut into your culture and say you have to do something that you full-heartedly believe as a parent and were taught and raised, it's just wrong.
It certainly is. Corey Evan, you have a question for the Assemblyman.
Yeah, I've noticed that over the years they've been adding to the requirements, like around, 2000 they had to add the hepatitis B requirement, and now I think the newest requirement added was the whooping cough one. But you also know that these things aren't tested for, allergic reactions in the kids. What do you have to say about that?
That's one of those scary things we face as parents. It's, how is this going to be affected? What is going to happen to my child? And I don't want to get into, the whole argument like with the autism thing, because that was found out to be completely debunked. But the fact when we got to start looking at things, where parents are losing their children because they're not vaccinating them, that's just wrong. There's so many cultural things. Now, to add different, hey, you need to take this, you need to take this. Look, I was a soldier. I was a sergeant for 10 years. I've got so many different vaccinations running through me where I could use anthrax as sugar. But it doesn't mean that these need to happen to children, because I saw soldiers get sick and end up, sick for weeks because, something that we didn't know that they had a reaction to. And I understand military going to foreign countries, but we're talking about children playing on a playground here.
Yeah, that's true. And I should note, ladies and gentlemen, Assemblyman Devon served, I believe it was 2 tours in Iraq, and you have seen it all, Assemblyman. You've been one of the rare people who has actually seen it all. You've seen disease break out. You've seen people get their limbs blown off. You've seen it all, and so you sort of you have the right to tell people here, because you've experienced it. You have a very interesting opinion to put forth when it comes to this. I appreciate you coming out and speaking to this, sir. Now, when is this supposed to hit the legislative floor here in the state of California?
Okay, let's see here. On Wednesday, April 8th, it will hit the Senate Health Committee. So I encourage any parents out there, anybody who's concerned, to come down, because you all may not know this, but you have every right to come down and have your voice heard during the public comments during that hearing, and I encourage everybody to do so.
Now, for people outside Sacramento, is there a telephone number that they can call, a way they, or should they just be encouraged to call their assemblymen and senators?
Yeah, absolutely. Call your local assembly members, call your local senators. Blow up their phones. Let them know how you feel. Let them know you do not want your rights as a parent to be taken away from you.
And ladies and gentlemen, I should note a great way to get a hold of government officials is by fax machine. So if you go to the State of California website and go to where your official is, if they have a fax number on there, fax over your opposition and just and say no to this. And here's a simple thing on how you do it. You just say no on SB 277, oppose medicated vaccinations. You write that on the fax in big letters. You fax it over. You fax it all over the state. My goodness, we will get the message out if you do that.
Jason, here's an even easier way. Y'all pull out your smartphone, click your internet app, hit your Google, pull up your local representative, click there, and it'll give you an email where you can get a hold of them.
Sounds that I actually did not think of it that way, sir. But I appreciate that. I'm sort of a new old technology type.
Yeah, I do have the one thing of being the youngest Republican in this building. So.
Oh well, I think we'll take that as a compliment, sir. And you know what, sir? For not being interviewed very much, you're very energetic and you sound great on the radio this evening, sir. And before we go, I noticed here, I got your bio here, and I noticed that you serve on the Water, Parks, and Wildlife Committee as well as the Horticulture Committee. I want to get your opinion on the current decision by Jerry Brown to put these drought restrictions and water restrictions here in the state of California, if you could speak to that, what your opinion is and what you're going to do about it.
Well, it's about time the rest of the state catches up. My district, I've got several cities that have cut back already more than what the governor's asking in his restrictions. I've been talking since day one about, hey, what's the plan? And, I get back, things about, low-flow toilets or this, and to finally see the governor step up and use his authority to go, hey, we need to address this problem and start doing something, I see that as a good thing. However, when we start talking about, okay, don't water your lawn, don't do this, what are we doing to protect ourselves from, getting a ticket for having a dead lawn? Those things are never mentioned. And so those are conversations that I'm having with my local, with the city councils, with the county, reaching out to HOAs to make sure, as people don't water their lawns because we want to save every drop of water, that they're not going to get a ticket on the other side of that.
Yeah, well,
so, we got to make sure we're looking at the full aspect of things.
Yeah,
really, it's a classic double-edged sword.
Yeah, and we had our correspondent Orlene Kurla on last week, and a lady up in Northern California got fined $150 for just filling her bird bath. This is ridiculous to me. And we have people who are getting the likes of water rationing. There was a story last night on Los Angeles television saying that California water authorities in Long Beach are now using smart meters to meter people's usage of water. This is ridiculous.
Well, you give them an inch, they take a mile. So we've got to continue to fight and make sure that, what not just myself, but everybody else who went to war to protect is actually being protected. And that way everybody at home, I believe in people over politics. I believe in governments by the people, for the people, and that the people are the ones that we work for. And that we need to make sure when we go back home, when we're doing our job as legislatures, that we're asking and talking to the people, what do we need to do for you?
Now, I understand over in your district, which I believe is Kern County, you have
let me clarify. I've got a small part of Kern County. My majority is Tulare County.
Okay. All right. I understand, sir. Explain to us about how these water restrictions affect you, because you have a huge water package over in your district.
Yeah, I do, and it's with Tulare County's number one in ag. It's the home of the World Ag Expo. Kern County is number two in ag. When you're looking at a lot of the criticisms you hear are, one almond is a gallon of water, which, okay, whatever. The fact of the matter is that one almond, that 1 gallon of water creates how many jobs along the way? It comes down to the fact of you're talking about, people who are working on the farms, people who are working in food processing plants, in packing sheds, all the way to cold storage, all the way to these dock workers who went on strike because they wanted more money. All of these people's jobs and livelihoods are affected by this. And I hope people start waking up, and I hope other legislatures wake up and realize that they're not just hurting a farmer's pocketbook, they're hurting everybody across the entire state and across the country and around the globe by affecting food that's growing. You know, as far as cities in my area and cutting back, we're already exceeding the expectations. We've been doing it for over a year because we've been without water in certain parts of my district. You know, I have Eastside Porterville. Porterville's I grew up in Porterville. It's my hometown. And to see my hometown look like a third world country where we have to bring in water is just ridiculous. I did not go to war for that, sir.
Wow. That being said, what would you have to say to Governor Brown right now, who says that that the farmers who are getting an exemption from this water crisis only equivalates up to 2% of the population? What would you have to say to him?
My thing to him right now is follow through. Step up, provide leadership, follow through, make sure people are getting taken care of, and that doesn't mean just restricting use. You can only ask somebody to not take a shower for so long. You know, I lived where, you know, in 2003 when I went to Iraq for the first time at the beginning of the war, we were rationed 2 bottles of water a day in an MRE. Should that ever happen here in California, where we claim we're the 7th largest economy in the world, where we could be our own country if we wanted to, but yet we have third world country problems in our own backyard? That's a joke. We need to step up. We need to take care of people and do what's right.
Wow. I couldn't agree with you more, Assemblyman. Assemblyman Devon Mathis, thank you so much for coming on, explaining this to us, and for our listeners here in the state of California. Email your assemblyman. If you don't have a computer, you can email, fax. Just fax it over. Voice your opposition to this, because your voices need to be heard, not only due to the water issue, but the way of mandatory vaccines and how the government can take control of your kids so easily by one small bill. You give them one bill, they're going to take over all of our lives. Thank you so much, Assemblyman. Please keep us updated on that bill's progress and if it ends up hitting that Senate floor.
All right, Jason. Thank you for having me on. You guys take care.
All right. Thank you, sir. That was Assemblyman Devon Mathis joining us to discuss the mask of mandatory vaccines here in the state of California, as well as speaking to the water restrictions that Governor Jerry Brown put into effect last week. I'm Jason Miller. You're listening to the Evan Miller Report, and we will be right back after these messages.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
In a moment, cancer changed our lives forever.
We were told nothing could be done to enjoy these final moments together.
But in that moment, when all seemed lost, St. Jude Children's Research Hospital gave us hope.
Because at this moment, St. Jude Children's Research Hospital is saving lives with pioneering research and care. We're changing the way the world treats childhood cancer by sharing our discoveries with doctors and scientists everywhere.
And we'll never have to pay St. Jude for anything, ever.
At this moment, she wants to be in her own bed.
I want to be back at school with my friends. I want to be outside playing.
Please take a moment and join St. Jude in finding cures and saving children. Visit stjude.org.
That's the closing bell. I'll just be brief. The Dow was down 5 points at 17,875. The Nasdaq down 7 points at 49.10, and the S&P 500 down 4 points at 2076. So sort of, kind of like the weather. And for Market Watch, it's an age-old complaint. Advertisers are lobbing their products at children who then whine and plead for whatever plastic crap they see across their screens. But now, mobile apps are drawing the fire, and Google's new kid-themed YouTube app in particular. The app is designed to filter out adult content and make it easier for parents to help children find suitable content. A group of advocates are expected to the FTC to probe whether the Kids app is unfairly targeting young kids with an overdose of commercials. The coalition includes Campaign for Commercial-Free Childhood, the Center for Digital Democracy, American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, and the Consumer Federation of America. YouTube Kids, which made its debut in February, allows children to pick entertainment and educational programs from hundreds of channels. But the coalition maintains that McDonald's, Mattel, and others have put ads into the mix, and it is melted together to make it often difficult to tell apart from entertainment. The coalition says that it downloaded a YouTube Kids app on an Android, an iPad, and an iPhone, and was troubled by the large amount of commercial material that was presented as programming. Neither McDonald's, Mattel, nor Disney, also mentioned in the report, could immediately be reached for comment. While I do agree that too many ads can be too much for kids, I think that it's impossible to completely filter them out. So, gotta strike a balance there. And I'll just skip to the one that I touted at the beginning of the program. Starbucks, according to NBC, has said it would pay back workers after the completion of 21 credits previously for college, but that prompted some criticism that workers were being forced to wait too long for reimbursement. So, Starbucks has teamed up with Arizona State University, which charges roughly $30,000 for 2 years of online degree programs, to expand their eligibility for its program for just those with junior and senior amounts of college credits to allow for a full 4 years of paid tuition for an online degree from Arizona State. There you are, ladies and gentlemen. If you work making coffee for folks, you could go to school at Arizona State and pretty soon be able to quit Starbucks and get yourself a decent job, economy permitting. Jay?
I don't believe it. I'll believe that when coffee beans grow in the United States. That's all I gotta say.
They do in Hawaii, but I guess that's just a technicality.
Technicalities. Hawaii is an island. Yes, it's part of the United States, but it is still an island. I'm speaking about the 49 states that we have on the current continent of North America.
There's nothing virtually, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I'm saying. All right, Corey Evan, he has the business news. Thank you so much for that. All right, time for some political news. And our first story out of D.C. has to do with Barack Obama having a cry. U.S. President Obama has a lot on his plate, according to some, but one item is causing him considerable stress. What is it? His impending empty nest syndrome. 16-year-old daughter Malaya hasn't even finished high school yet, but Obama says the thought of her heading off to college has him crying several times a day, in fact. I start tearing up in the middle of the day, and I can't explain it why I'm so sad, he said. They're leaving me, he told a laughing crowd at a prayer breakfast today, injecting a fake quiver into his voice. Obama appealed for support as he starts to fret about the oldest of his two daughters fleeing the coop. And, ladies and gentlemen, maybe all those tears had to do with that power outage that reportedly struck much of Washington, D.C. today. The U.S. State Department, White House, Capitol, and Justice Department were among the buildings that lost power. Maybe all the tears ran through the outlets inside the White House and overflowed all the power junkets over in D.C., huh, Cor?
Yeah, Mr. Obama, just drink your baba and stop crying already.
A White House spokesperson said that the backup generators kicked in initially after the outage, according to a tweet from CBS News correspondent Mark Kohler. The Department of Energy, which is responsible for the nation's power, was also affected by the outage. The fact did not go unnoticed in the Twitter sphere. One tweeter said, rather ironic that Energy Department was affected by a widespread power outage in the Washington, D.C. area. Other areas throughout
That's
DC,
about right.
Yeah. Other areas throughout the D.C. metro area, including the University of Maryland and College Park, also went dark as well. So we hope that the Exceptional Conservative Show, which is based out of Washington, D.C., is able to go on the air tonight. If not going on the air, we know why, because all it had to do was because President Obama decided to have a good cry. Good
Hashtag
grief.
backup generator.
Yeah, better have that ready. And on that crying note, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for tonight's Lawsuits Across America.
And now it's time for Lawsuits Across America. The cases are real. All rise for the Honorable Corey Evans.
Yeah. Sit, people. I want to get right to the docket. A 3-judge U.S. Appeals Court panel ruled today that pornographic magazine publisher Larry Flynt has a right to join death row inmates in lawsuits seeking to reveal the states of Missouri's execution protocols. This from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. Several media and consumer watchdog organizations interested in lawsuits with potential consequences for government transparency had filed briefs to support him. Flynt, the iconic publisher of the pornographic magazine Hustler, invoked a First Amendment right to view sealed documents that might identify an anesthesiologist on the state execution team. That info is confidential under Missouri law. In a separate case, he also asserted a right to view docket entries that were sealed without explanation in a suit challenging the legality of Missouri's execution protocol. Both lawsuits failed, but if Flynt wins his bid to unseal the documents, the public can get a look at the factors considered by the federal courts. Flynt argued, that he had an interest because he was one of the victims of the white supremacist Joseph Paul Franklin. Missouri executed Franklin in November 2013 for the 1977 sniper killing of Gerald Gordon outside a Richmond Heights synagogue. Franklin, upset that Hustler published pornographic images of an interracial couple, also shot Flynt on the steps of a Georgia courthouse in 1978, paralyzing him. Flynt had advocated that Franklin should be published by spending the remainder of his life in prison rather than be killed by the state and put out of his misery. Just like the pervert to try and pervert the law, eh, Jay?
Indeed, sir. Indeed.
Yeah, I just found it funny that Larry Flynt would make it into the docket, but congratulations.
It's a load of Flynt, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, and you get the one-hand clapping. Moving on.
Yeah, nothing from me.
Yeah. Anyway, moving on, a St. Louis University law professor, while we're in St. Louis, and 3 students have demanded the city of St. Louis reveal plans to use public money to pay for a new downtown football stadium and schedule a public vote or expect a lawsuit. The letter threatens to further cloud the financing of Governor Jay Nixon's $985 million Riverfront Arena proposal and hopes of keeping the National Football League in St. Louis. The students, along with SLU Law School professor and legal clinic supervisor John Ammon, sent a letter on Monday to City Councilor Winston Calvert on behalf of their client, William White. Ammon says he believes any city assistance, even vacating streets, will trigger a city law requiring a public vote. Ammon said White, who used to be homeless, is a client at the clinic and expresses frustration that the city might spend millions of dollars on a new stadium without setting aside any extra for social services. White, according to the SLU letter, wants the city to consider 2% of the city stadium's funding for homeless services. But we will have to wait and see exactly how much of that, if any, is indeed set aside. And on that note, I declare today's Lawsuits Across America is case dismissed. Jay?
Thank you very much, Corey. All right, here's an oddball news story for you. A man committed suicide just outside the buffet at a Las Vegas area casino resort early in the evening this past Easter Sunday. John Noble, 53, died from a self-inflicting gunshot wound to the head. He purposefully chose the M Resort in Henderson, Nevada, about 15 minutes from the famed Las Vegas Strip, as the scene of his death. Before killing himself, he set his own car on fire in a parking garage. The night before Noble ended his life, he sent a box of his gripes against M Resort employees to the Las Vegas Review-Journal, according to the newspaper. He said, quote, "Today I end my life to M Resort Spa Casino and its employees," the man wrote in one of the 2 attached suicide notes. Noble blamed his then impending death on depression. He suffered from depression, he said, because employees of the M Resort had granted him a lifetime pass to free food at the buffet in September 2010, but later took the perk away and in fact banned him from the resort altogether. Noble indicated the resort management instituted the ban because female employees felt he had been harassing them. This information was part of an array of handwritten notes concerning the people he blamed for his misery. All told, Noble poured out 270 pages of blame. He also added a table of contents. He also created a 2-hour DVD. My goodness, ladies and gentlemen.
A 2-hour DVD? This guy must have been nuts.
He must have ate too many donuts. Get it?
Yeah.
Donuts.
Too many from the buffet. I didn't even know buffets had donuts. Well, anything's possible in Vegas.
Must have been misery donuts because, my goodness, it really set him off.
So much for what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, eh?
Yeah, pretty much. It made a national story today. All right, Corey Evan, you have entertainment briefly today. What do you have for us?
I'll just get to the point. James Best, known for playing the bumbling Sheriff Roscoe P. Coltrane on the 1980s comedy The Dukes of Hazzard, has died. He was 88. He died Monday night at a hospice center in Hickory, North Carolina after a brief illness following complications from pneumonia, according to a statement from Stephen Latshaw, a spokesman for the family. He's got to start in the 50s acting for small parts in TV shows and Western films before being cast as the sheriff for the Dukes of Hazzard, running from 1979 to 1985. Our prayers to his family. Our prayers on behalf of his family. That's what I mean to say. And I'll just wrap it up like that. Hope to entertain you again tomorrow. That's your entertainment report for today. I'm Corey Evan. Jay.
Thank you very much, Corey. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, that is the Evan Miller Report for this Tuesday, April the 7th, 2015. Again, many thanks to Assemblyman Devon Mathis for joining us earlier tonight. Missed any of his interview, will be available on shrmedia.com later this evening. The weather is next with the BBC Met Office's Peter Fox here on the SHR Media Network, followed by The Exceptional Conservative Show with Kim McClinton. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Across California, of course, nowhere near enough to bust the drought, and some mountain snow thanks to this area of low pressure. And overnight, that will bring a little bit of snowfall to the mountains of southern Oregon, northern parts of Nevada, and increasingly over towards Utah as we head into Wednesday. Another area of low pressure will bring some wet weather to the northeast of the United States and certainly a cool feel to the weather in New York with that rain and wind. Temperatures here just 43 in terms of Fahrenheit. Could be a bit of snow on the northern edge of that system too, moving into parts of Maine late in the day. For the Pacific Northwest, though, high pressure with us, so the weather's settled. Should be a fair amount of sunshine here, although we do have cloud and some showers working in across Washington and Oregon. There remains really of that area of low pressure. The rainfall having cleared out of the way from California, those temperatures will begin to rise slowly as we'll start to see a bit more sunshine. There's that cold weather then working in across the northeast of the United States, just 43 Fahrenheit in New York. A cooler day in Washington with cloud and outbreaks of rain. Still, though, with some warm sunshine and showers further south across the Carolinas and also into stretches of Florida and the Keys. Now, for New York, it stays pretty cloudy and cool during Thursday, but things are set to warm up. Should see temperatures climb to 57 Fahrenheit by Friday, but the threat of cloud and some spots of rain never far away. Sunshine for the Pacific Northwest on Thursday. Cloudy and wet here by Friday.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.